I never knew you could lend money from other people to do property. I always loved property, and I'd loved property from being a little girl because I used to play Monopoly and I used to win against my brothers. So I found a house, put it on booking.com and made some money. On average across the year, I was making $1,850, but me and the kids were still living in a little rented terraced house and I wanted to give them a really nice house. This investor came from social media. So I built a double-storey extension on the back of this, so he came down quite often to Doncaster to look at it and so he could learn. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's my first time in Northern Ireland, which is exciting. So what I want to do today is just take you through my story. So I went from being £24,000 in debt to building a £10 million GDV property portfolio in just 7 years. I had 2 little kids at the time, Thomas and Ellie, and life was hard. I got taught, like many of you, go to school, get a good job, work up the career ladder, pay off your mortgage, pay into your pension, and work until you're 65, 70, and that's a good life. I always loved property, and I'd loved property from being a little girl because I used to play Monopoly and I used to win against my brothers, so I knew I'd be good at property, just doing it in the real world. So that's how I decided to start. And then I was seeing all these people that just seem to live the best life, money. And then it comes back to how can I make as much money as possible? Property. So that night in my little rented house with my kids, did some Googling, and I found a guy called Paul Smith. And Paul Smith talked about joint ventures. Well, this was like a light bulb going off in my head. I never knew you could lend money from other people to do property. But I thought, I need to meet that guy. And that guy had done loads and loads of property, but he taught me how to raise money from other people. In debt, as a single mum, living in a rented house, I raised my first £100,000 from my dentist. His problem was, he was running a dental practice, he had a lot of money, and his business was building up a lot of cash. He'd love to do property, but he didn't have time. Just before I met my dentist, I did rent to rent. So I thought, I don't have any money. Buying property seems a bit scary, so I'm going to go and rent property and put it on booking.com and see what happens. At this point, no one had told me this would be difficult. And you know the old saying, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. So I didn't hear that trying to get landlords and stuff was difficult, so I just went out there and decided to do it. So I found a house, put it on booking.com and made some money. So this was a block of 6 apartments in the Peak District. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. I don't even own the property and I'm making money. Service accommodation doesn't work everywhere, and those of you doing it know. But the reason why it worked in the Peak District is the Peak District's got a lot of rundown hotels and B&Bs, and people were looking for full apartments, full houses to go, cottages. I did a 3-night minimum stay because I figured out at 1 night minimum stay, the cleaning costs are going to kill me, constant churn, and the booking fee. So I'll do mine at 3 nights and I'll see how it goes. I literally rang the estate agent up. I said, have you got any houses, any stuff for rent? She went, actually, I've just spoke to a lady. She was going to sell them, but she's keeping them. She's got these apartments. I said, oh, she's had tenants mess her around. I was like, brilliant. And I agreed to do a 5-year agreement with her. Pay her $1,390 rent per month for the 2. I didn't pay a deposit because I was a limited company and we did a lease agreement. So my nightly rate, depending on the season, was $170 to $250 a night. The housekeeping, every time I had housekeepers go in and guest change, were £50. On average, across the year, I was making $1,850. But in the summer months, I was raking in about £3,000 net profit. In the winter, I was probably doing £500, but I was really chuffed that I managed to do it. So when I come to have my teeth done with my dentist, and I thought I'm going to go and raise some finance, I was showing him these, and he was so impressed. He was running a dental practice, he had a lot of money, and his business was building up a lot of cash. He'd love to do property, but he didn't have time. So I said to him, if he lent me the first lot of money, I'll go do a buy, refurb, refinance, get the money back out, and then I'll do one for him. So it was one for me, one for you. The dentist started with me 7 years ago, and he's still one of my investors today. I then went on to do this one. At the time, this was about after my first year in property, I'd done really well, managed to pay my debt off, but me and the kids were still living in a little rented terraced house, and I wanted to give them a really nice house. I bought this on market, but I got 40 grand knocked off, which I was really excited about. And this had been owned by a woman that lived in Europe. She inherited it. She was an accidental landlord. Tenants had been in it for 12 years while she'd owned it, and she'd not done a thing to it. Tenants moved out, and she thought, crap, what, there's all compliance now. I need to do stuff. So I came in with a cash offer and I got an investor to lend me the money again. This investor came from social media, and out of the blue, this message came through saying, Abi, I've got a load of money in the bank, would love to work with you, can we do something? At the time, I was only taking money and giving it back after 12 months for return. I said, the only way I can work with you is lending me money for a year, I'll give you first charge on the property, you get it back after a year, and I'll pay you about 8 to 10%. And he said yes. And what I did with this investor was, because he wanted to learn a little bit as we went, so I built a double-storey extension on the back of this, so he came down quite often to Doncaster to look at it and so he could learn. There's 1 million homes right now empty, all over. So what I would say is I would call on you guys as wanting to do property to get out and find these homes, because we should come out, find them, do them up and get them back into community use, either flipping them or renting them out, and that's how we can help. If you're worried about the tax, check out capital allowances, because you can earn £1 million tax-free. So I train a lot of students on how to do property, and the biggest thing that stops them is taking action. My advice to anyone is just to go after whatever you want. Do it properly, have plan B, have plan C, but if you do it right, my gosh, you could build so amazing things.